Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is that time of evening. How are you doing, Heather?
I am doing great. How are you, Matt?
I'm very good. You have a little bit of a different setup.
Yeah,
You're
I
in the
rearranged
where? In the kitchen today? Dining room?
the kitchen table location. So, being
I
flexible and adaptable like we all have to be right now.
Yes, most
And
definitely. I remember the kitchen table well. It's where when I was selling life insurance, most of the business was done. So,
all
um,
righty.
I unfortunately now I eat at my desk most times because I'm a crazy person like that. But it is
Yeah.
what it is. So, if anyone is new, or even if you're returning, this is How to CPCU. I'm Matt. This is Heather. We are a production of volunteers from the CPCU Society, giving you the lowdown on the society, the designation, all of the value and the opportunity there is therein with those two things. And so, as usual, quick reminder, as you're watching, like, comment, subscribe. Even if you were like watching this over on Facebook or on the Periscope feed on Twitter, please throw us a subscribe on YouTube. It helps with the algorithm and helps them broadcast this out to more folks in the insurance industry. So definitely do that for us. And as usual, after you like, throw out the share or the retweet on this broadcast so that other folks know what you are listening and watching to, and that helps us also blast that message to more places. So, all right, this evening we have a very interesting. Is that it for news? I think I always miss something. Oh, two things. Before we get rolling, I forgot about this on Sell Like a CPCU. We are looking for a production assistant. So if
Yes.
anyone who is interested in helping us source guests, keep the schedule, do some social media posting, and set up the live cast and stuff like that. And even if you would like to take part in some of the live casts as well, we are looking for someone to help us out in that regard and kind of put in about an hour to two a week to kind of help us make this program even run even smoother and better. So if you do know anyone, if you are interested, or if you know anyone who's interested, please send them my way or Heather's way and reach out to us. Probably by email is best, and we would love to entertain that. The other is, as a reminder, hopefully if you are in the CPCU Society, you are on Interact, on the message boards. Definitely take advantage of that tool as an incredible resource. And I put up a post about the production assistant up on Interact, but also there is a shared events calendar for all of the chapters that want to list their events on there. So definitely check that out. We maintain it on Google Calendar that is available to anyone that has the link in the post, and you can find out what some of the events are that are coming up in April and May and therein after that you can take part in. All right, that's enough news. We have a fantastic topic today. We are talking about data analytics and how they are used at the Institute. And so we have a very special guest recommended. When Sharon Coaches says, bring someone on the program, like it's pretty much a given, right, Heather?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. CPCU Society Press speaks. You're in the door.
Yeah. It is basically the live casting equivalent of being voluntold when you're a leader in one of the chapters. So without further ado, from the Institutes, we have Adam Carmichael with us. Adam, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me here today.
Yeah, no, thank you for taking the time. So for folks who don't know who you are, just give us a little Reader's Digest. Who are you, and what role do you have over there at the Institutes?
Yeah, thanks. So again, Adam Carmichael, I am the president of Pro Knowledge at the Institutes. And what that basically means is I oversee our content development, delivery, as well as exams for our designation programs and the like.
Awesome. All right. So give me an idea of what that kind of looks like. Like, how did you come to the Institutes? Have you always done data analytics, or was this something that you kind of grew into?
Yeah, good question. So I came to the Institutes actually as part of the Insurance Research Council doing public policy research. If you're familiar with them, if not, you should have them on as well. They'd make a great guest. I can get you an invite if you want to.
Awesome.
But the Insurance Research Council doing public policy research for the insurance industry. And as I did that, I kind of really, there's plenty of analytics going on there, applied a little differently. Then it's there that I earned my CPCU.
Awesome.
And continued on, and then moved over into the education side. I've been involved with our exams for many years. And in the last year or so, I've been in this role. So,
Oh, fantastic. Awesome. All right. So you're somewhat familiar with the analytics world, right, Heather? You are a part-time data junkie, is that right?
I would say I am a data dabbler because I would like to understand it more than I do. What I really love about data is not the numbers. I like the story that it tells. And so I've been involved a lot in translating what numbers say into a meaningful story around them so that people can digest it and go, oh yeah, this is a really great idea, or this is going really well. Or, oh no, we have this challenge and we have this pain point that we need to deal with right now. So I don't like data just thrown at me just for data's sake. I like to take it and I like to go, what does this mean? And why is it important to the group of people that you need to give it to?
Awesome. So
Yeah.
Adam, where are you pulling data from? So like, what are the sources of data that are kind of like, what's the pipeline that's coming into you that then you're kind of, sticking the model onto, or how it's being chopped up and processed?
Yeah, great question. And Heather, I loved your answer, because that's really what we want, right? To be able to draw conclusions, and would love to talk more about that. Where I'm really, with data, is several sources. First, I would say, is our own students, right? We look at who our students are, what kind of trends we're seeing there, whether that's job role, experience. I don't know if you had my dog barking in the background there.
That's okay. We're in search of a mascot. Well, actually, no, we're not, because Heather's dog.
Gotcha.
If someone's mowing the lawn, Heather's dog's gonna freak out right about now. But
For sure.
All right, so we're good. So, but yeah, so that's kind of my first source, right? Is that data as it's coming in. Then we look at data from them. How are they progressing through our programs? And one of the exciting things as we talk about our digital content is we can really get it's a source of a lot more data, right? I don't know about you guys, but for me, when I did CPCU, it was a book. And of course, nobody had any idea where I was at in that book, how far along, right? Other than me. But with the digital course, we have a lot more data. We can see how are people progressing, where are they getting stuck, what do they need to kind of keep going back, and maybe that that means we need to add more explanation in that area to make it clearer. That kind of data is very is tremendous for us in terms of really improving our content and how we're ultimately delivering our products.
So kind of before we get into the specifics of how those evolutions are happening right now, what did it look like going from a world where it was, especially pre-COVID, where it was kind of a mix of texts and a couple of online offerings, to now what it looks like with, I guess, the vast majority, if not all of the offerings pretty much being virtual?
Yeah, great question. COVID definitely was an impact, but even beyond that, our world's been going digital for a while, right? I mean, look at what we're doing right now. I mean, we might be in our home, but this kind of delivery has been growing, and so we've really seen those trends to do that, and it also gives us tremendous, first, like we just talked about, more data, but also an opportunity to do things from an instructional design standpoint. To add more things to our content, work in examples from subject matter experts that are in the field, and put that right in the content, right at that point where, sometimes just having an example or a case study right there really brings the whole thing to life and helps people put it together. So when you look at our CPCU content now, as you said, you can take the entire thing online, and there's still words and reading, but there's also video, there's animations, there's whiteboards, that animations, if you're trying to work on CPCU 540 that has a fair amount of math, and I know many of our CPCU students love that course. I say facetiously, but for those of us with a math background, we love it. But using a whiteboard is a better way of teaching some math concepts and being able to walk through really calculating the ratio and showing that happen. And so for people who don't have that background, having those to watch and see how it really is happening in time, it's a better opportunity for that instructional design to really help them learn it. So that's been tremendous on the content and the delivery side. As far as the transformation, I know you asked the exams as well. That's been absolutely, due to COVID, we made some major moves on that, and analytics helped inform us on that as well. But being able to deliver virtual exams, we use data to really design the exams in a way that we felt was fair. That's always our goal with our exams, is a fair exam to give people an opportunity to apply what they've learned and show that they have mastery over the subject matter. And so we really want to design tests that way, application oriented, all of those things, but in a way that also is safe, right? I mean, right now, let's be honest, we felt like a year or so ago, a little more than that, honestly, at this point, but about a year or so ago, it felt like, do we want to stop risk management education right now? It seemed like the worst time to stop risk management education or give anybody a reason to slow it down, right? If anything, we were like, no, this of all times, this felt like the reason to make risk management education more accessible.
Oh yeah.
And so that really factored into serving our industry, serving the society ultimately, as our industry does. In terms of risk and insurance. And so that factored into the exams. And then we are able to use the analytics and look at those exams. And we've seen very consistent pass ratios. That's an important measure from our standpoint as far as analytics. How are things going? You may sometimes hear people, I had to do blue books, or I had to do essay, or I had to do this. And now you say, you have the virtual exam, blah, blah, blah. Hey, they're challenging. If you know your stuff, you're going to do fine. But they're challenging. You're going to have to that's, and I think that's what people want. The designation means that you know your stuff.
Yeah.
I know I follow those candidate communities that are out there, not only just on Interact, but there's a homegrown one out there on Facebook that everybody tries to support each other through. And you hear that mixed bag of reviews. Some people are like, the virtual exam is stressful, but the stress is coupled with the fact that I felt more comfortable at my house, trying to do this. And as somebody, who took the long path, the 10-year journey on that CPCU, I would say I know that going to the testing center was the most stressful thing that I ever did to take my CPCU exams. And, I had the opportunity to be able to take exams at, like a company testing center inside my company, but then I also went to like the Prometric places and things like that. And gosh, I would just be drenched in sweat when I would leave those locations. And then you have the loud typers around you on the keyboards that just and it's hard to stay focused there. And I can see that transition to the virtual has given people that freedom and flexibility of also taking that exam. If you're at midnight, in the middle of the night, kind of, that's when your brain best operates, you can take your exam then,
That's right.
So the ease of access for it is amazing.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we've really heard great feedback on. We've had better than 90% of our, we've surveyed, because obviously it was a new thing and we wanted direct feedback. And what's really stood out to me was more than 90% were saying, yes, I want to keep doing my exams this way, rather of those who had previously done them a different way. And that included people who did not pass. Like they were still saying the experience itself just was a better experience. And that's very telling to me when I, Heather, you mentioned this. What is the story tell that, what's the data that's telling that story? And it really showed me that, okay, people are really responding to this for the reasons you just said, Heather, just, that and some people they better. We've seen people test at midnight. I've seen it because we can tell when they're testing, right? We see people test at 5 a.m. I've seen, which would not be good for me, but for some people that's what they want. And that's actually a great thing from our viewpoint of, again, it ultimately, our mission is to expand that knowledge, right? And this is giving more people that chance. So.
Yeah. And so Mike K chiming in, amen. It's hard any method you took the exams.
That's right, Mike.
I think there's a lot of people out there that are saying, I used to write and write and write and write and write, and you guys have it easy. You could just pick one of 4 options. It's 6 of one, half dozen another. But my question to you, as far as like the analytics goes, is have you seen a stark difference in the pass-fail rate as a result of, switching between mediums? Has that kind of popped out, or has it kind of been equivalent?
Great question, Matt. And it's something that is and continues to be of extreme importance to us. We very much analyze that data, not just aggregate, but at the every exam level, and really look at that. It's been very encouraging to me to see extremely consistent pass ratios as we've changed the format. I mean, to the point that it's been on the money exact numbers on most of our exams. And I think that's a testimony. I lift up my team who's built those exams. They really do a lot of individual analysis. We do data analytics. I can't get into all of it, but down to every single question. Yeah. And really look at that to really make sure that the questions are doing their job, that they're fair, and really getting at what it is. And that helps us to build exams that have been statistically verified, and in that sense. And that's shown in our results now.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's exciting to hear that you're testing the test out there, and really pulling the data to make the determination that what you're doing is working. Because you can make adjustments to approach, or, is this the right kind of question for this? So that excites me as an instructor as well, because I teach part-time as an adjunct professor. So that to me is my biggest tell when my test comes back and I look at it and I say, well, wait a minute, nobody got this question right. Maybe I need to look at that question. For future tests. So it's really, that's really exciting that you guys are looking at it at that granular of a level.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do exactly that too. And to make sure if that happens, wait, no one got this, something's wrong. That's how I look. I don't blame at that point. It's us, not them.
Now, let me ask you something like in terms of, like, do certain questions, are they designed to have a lower success rate? Like, so I would imagine in building the test, certain questions are, not necessarily gimmies, but they're considered kind of like more just kind of foundational. Like, if you know the thing, you just really quickly answer, and the majority of people that know the definition of the term are going to get that right, versus another question that might be a more complicated, say, application type question. Do you have a hierarchy of questions where, certain questions, if 80% of people aren't getting it, you're like, all right, we need to fix this because it's a little bit, maybe poorly worded or something. And then other questions where you're like, you're happy with a 60% success rate or a 50% success rate? Or is it just like the same across?
So, there's variation for sure. I mean, it's hard to build every single question to be to always be, 80% get it right, or whatever number you want to put on it. So there's absolutely variation. Where I would say, I'd actually tie it somewhat back to the course. Kind of like you said, Matt, I mean, if there's some foundational things, so let's say the subject is risk management, right? Certainly an important subject. There's some initial things that might be the steps in the risk management process and you better get this one right. but part of that goes to the design of the course, where you're establishing certain foundations, and then you're getting into some applications of that by their nature might be a little bit more. And I'll give a different example. In many of you are familiar with CPCU 520. That's our insurance operations course. And when you get to the reinsurance, it's not that it's actually at a more challenging level, but for many people, it's a new subject for them. That's just my experience in working with students and talking with them, that as they get to it, they may not be in claims or underwriting, but when they hear that, they know it, like they have a baseline of knowledge. But not everybody has the reinsurance background or has done that much in that. So that assignment becomes a starting from scratch for many people. Yep. And so therefore, sometimes those questions are just a little bit harder because people didn't have, like they either need to spend a little more time on that. Note to Heather, if you're an instructor on that. But spend a little more time, or they think, oh, it's just, but really some of it is just where the background is, right? And so, so you'll see some variation. I think sometimes it has more to do with like you mentioned, Matt, the application, things like that. But we're not trying to make certain questions harder. It's a reflection sometimes just of some content is more complex, right? I when I think about that as a more general for people, if you're doing a math test, most of us will get the certain, the addition questions. But if the educational objective, and that's how we look at things as we build our content, is we are testing that educational objective. So if it is, do the addition, well, that's what the questions are going to be, calculate this addition equation versus, as you get further into that math, all of a sudden it's, the same verb, calculate, but now it's calculate something to the powers over, the future value of money. Yep. It's a little more complicated, right? I mean, and so you're going to, inevitably, that means that ends up creating a little bit more difficulty in the question by its very nature of the subject more than the designing of the question, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll let Heather keep going, but I'll cut her off for 1 second here. Bill Wilson, it looks like his hand is cramping up, remembering the 4 hours straight that he had to write from the old 5-part exam series. I guess it was a survival of the fittest back in that day.
Yes.
No, I appreciate the attention to detail that you're taking with how you're looking at this and how it fits an adult education mindset, because adults do learn holistically different than children. And it is, making that leap and making a choice to take an institute's course means that you're committed to, professional development, and you're wanting to dive in and learn and research about another topic. But I'd be curious to kind of know, like, are you guys looking at like the trending that's happening with with the testing? Is it at the same level? Like, are the same number of people still engaged taking courses, or is it higher now because they seem to be a lot more accessible for people, like we talked about before with testing and everything?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when we revised our CPCU program with the digital approach last year, we definitely saw an increase in students, and that's encouraging because it is meaning, people are both responding to it, as well as it is that more accessible for the adult learner. It also, I think, is reflective when the way the content is set up. It's designed in small chunks, so you can be consumed that way. And I don't know about you, but as an adult learner myself, time is often the biggest challenge, right? And so when you have the course set up in such a way that you can go in and see right away, okay, this one, I got 15 minutes, I can make progress, or I got 20 minutes right now, I can make some progress. Before you know it, you're making, that the week's gone by and you've hit different things, rather than say looking at that big book and going, I don't know, or is it going to be worth reading a page, or this, you want to get through large amounts. Here it's designed in such a way that I'm learning that educational objective. I I can hit that amount right now, in some cases in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and hit that one, or you can do multiple, and it speaks to that adult learner. But overall, within the CPCU program, as I mentioned, we've been encouraged to see growth in the last year in terms of students, especially exams taken. That's showing my heritage as an exam maker. I tend to go look at the exams a lot. And the exams taken have definitely, we've seen a good response. And I think it is a combination, though, not just of the availability of the virtual exams, but of the content itself.
So give me some examples here in terms of, yeah, I mean, you don't have to be specific, but what have been some changes or examples of, maybe even pivots that have happened either in the program or even as granular as, certain types of questions or whatever that might have gotten thrown out or introduced as a result of, that kind of like, analysis of the numbers, so to speak, once, the majority of those courses are out there and virtual. What are some specifics in terms of action steps that have been taken? Yeah,
great question. And I think I'm going to give a couple different levels. So, because you mentioned pivots and things like that. So feel free to stop me if you want to jump in. But one of them, we're talking about analytics right now. We've worked analytics into some of the course content itself, right? Like to help teach the subject as well. And how does it apply to risk and insurance? And this, I'm gonna hit on this theme a little bit as we go, but previously, what made you an expert was access to information and kind of knowledge, right? And that's kind of what made you an expert. But nowadays, everyone has access to information, right? I mean, in fact, there's so much, data's everywhere. Access isn't the problem. It's what do you do with it, right? And can you make sense of it? Can you separate the signal and the noise with that information? What's relevant, what's not, what's significant? And so in terms of the types of things in the content, that affects our approach. We want, and this will affect the exams as well, which I think is where you were headed, Matt. So I'll get to that. But from a content perspective, we want to be focused more on critical thinking and problem solving as it applies to risk and insurance. And so rather than just knowledge of risk and insurance, it's developing those skills through the courses of being able to apply it to real life scenarios. And as such, the way we work through our instructional design is as we develop our content, we use an educational objective and a series of those educational objectives. It could say, describe whether, determine whether a described claim is covered under the CGL, or under coverage A or whatever, and so you're applying it. It's not just what's the CGL or what's coverage A. It's determining, is this covered or not? Why not? And being able to apply it to that situation. Not, another differentiator would be, these are the financial statements that an insurer reports to the NAIC. Okay. A better one is evaluate them, calculate, liquidity ratios, determine, is the business going well or where are improvements needed? So it's, more about application. And so by designing the content that way, that allows us to design different questions too, right? Because now the questions can be, and this is, I think, where you're going, Matt, but can be more application focused because they're in line with those educational objectives and the content that's associated to it. And so now we can present a scenario and ask questions off of that and get into that. And so you'll see, and I know you were just throwing out an example earlier, but you're not going to see many questions that just, that are, what is this definition or what is this, kind of thing, because we recognize everybody can really access that. If that's all you really want to know is the definition. The value and the meaning, I think, and I think as fellow CPCUs, where we want the designation and to have meaning in the marketplace as well is, you know what to do with it. You know how to apply this. You've shown through passing these exams that you can see a scenario and apply the knowledge you have to those situations. And so that's another pivot, I'll say, compared to some years ago of where you may have seen more questions that were that, or what are the 5 steps of the risk management process? No, now it's, here's a scenario, using the risk management process, how would you go about it? That kind of thing. It's a different approach. I would say just more of an application or performance-based approach. So that's how as far as some of the changes that we've been pivoting and making throughout it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, real life application is so important because in today's insurance industry roles, there's an expectation that you know how to do what they ask you to do a lot of the time when you step into a job. And the way you get that is understanding how to apply a concept to a real life application and situation. And once again, it feeds that whole concept of, what is it? Is it the 70-30-20 concept, then the way that adults learn, and 70% is just that hardcore getting in their real life experience, and then 30% would really be about the people, the mentoring and the relationships that you may get through that. And then you get into the least of it is going to be, I'm sitting down and I'm reading a book, or I'm sitting in a class learning about something. So that's awesome. Yeah.
So this might be a simple like yes or no, or it could be more complicated than that. But how far does this data analytics reach? Obviously, we've been talking specifically about things like the CPCU designation and exams that are associated with it. I'm assuming you're also kind of applying this to other designations like the ARM and such that are offered by the institutes, and then also the institutes is very much involved in say company-specific learning management and tailored programs that are tailored to the employer and what they're trying to develop with their employees. So, are you using these data analytics tools across the board on all of those things, or is it more kind of like focused in certain areas and not so much in others?
No, absolutely. Yeah, great question. And yes. No. He said it could be a yes or no, right? Yeah. Yes, we are certainly in our other programs doing very similar types of analysis, as well as that early on stuff as far as the students and where do we see the other piece of analysis, where do we see growth, where do we see the industry going, and so when which leads me to we have a designation that's focused on insurance analytics, right? Our associate in insurance data analytics, and so. Why is that? Because that's where that aspect of the industry is growing, and more people need those skills. So we're using our own analytics. We're using analytics on the industry data and where things are growing. Where do we see? We analyze where job growth is happening, and and look for those needs. Where are emerging issues? So you see more on cyber and things like that. That the analytics are informing what we're creating as far as new content, digital literacy in general, things like that are just vital in today's marketplace, especially within risk and insurance. So it's certainly applying it across as well. You did mention, I mean, we do partner with companies and are able to do much smaller courses in some cases as needed. We have a program, I mean, speaking on analytics, where using statistically validated questions, we can take a smaller topic. Let's just take just the CGL or a coverage is an easy example, and do what we call as a pre-test and say, hey, take this 20 minutes, see how you do, and we'll be able to identify from that, hey, yeah, you're doing great. We can break that into 10 different categories and say, these are the 2 that maybe you could use a little work on. And we can deliver a quick half hour on those 2 for you as kind of a good, it could be growth, could be maintenance. It could be, if you're about to move into a different area within a company and maybe you want to pick up on some things. So we have some, but really analytics is the driver behind that product, I'll call it, behind that solution. Because it it's all the analytics that show how that works and how we can do that. But it's also, that product by itself is a time saver, right? In those situations, it's not designation, you're not earning that, but you are kind of picking up that key knowledge you needed of, okay, this is where I need to focus my time, rather than say take a 5-hour or 8-hour course on something where actually 7 of the hours you already have, right? You already know that knowledge. And so now you're able to focus in on, these are the things that I need. There's some really cool, well, I geek out on it, so it's cool to me, studies on where by pre-testing on that and asking that question first, and then being able to say, look, these were the things you got wrong, it actually triggers the brain to be ready to learn, because you're more likely, your brain is going, okay, these are the things I don't know, I'm going to pay extra attention when I look at this content, which from an educational side, which is the way I approach it, is really exciting. And so, yeah, we have some, but really it's the analytics that fuel those kind of solutions. So some examples there anyway.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, Heather, how would you have liked to have been able to take some pre-tests so that you didn't have to repeat entire volumes of study before you...
That would have been fantastic. That's all I have to say. Yeah, I appreciate that tailored approach too, because then it's, the learner gets what they need, versus here, we're just going to dump this course on you because I think this is what you need to know, and
Right.
you make the course broad enough where it could cover what learners might need. But then they really get to hone in on the things that they may not have, they may not have in their knowledge bank. So that is super exciting to see the move in that direction, because that to me, I mean, I get into education philosophy here, that like formative and summative assessments and everything. If you're really gauging progress along the way, you're utilizing formative assessment, and really kind of interacting with someone throughout their educational journey. But then you get on that summative assessment side, and here's where you get to show your stuff, and here's the big show. So, and there goes my dog.
It took that long to get from where Adam is to you, Heather. So
That's
it's
right.
the speed of sound argument there. So no, I think this is all really interesting. Is there also benchmarking? My first thought was to ask you, in terms of the sources of data and whatnot, I would imagine a lot of it is data that you have in-house, right? So you're doing a lot of the data collection, which eliminates some of the concerns of data analytics, which has to do with, inconsistent or junk data and things like that, or incomplete data sets, right?
Sure.
Unreliable data sets. But so are you using also outside industry data sets, either in terms of benchmarking or data that's, and I don't even know if it's available, but data that's available from other, courses of study or designations and things like that are out there, to kind of compare, the institute's data set to theirs and see if there's any variation?
So let me just follow up. Are you referencing to exams or something else?
Anywhere. I mean, specifically, okay. I would think the exams, because a lot of that stuff is pretty much done in-house. But I mean, I'm definitely interested in finding out if in other areas you're also kind of pulling in outside data sets to kind of compare and contrast.
Yeah, no, great question. And we certainly pay a lot of attention and to what I'll call the overall testing industry, right? And so it's a little different, but in terms and even as we made the decision to switch to the virtual exams and things like that, we did do a fair amount of benchmarking with some other organizations that were doing similar. Anything from there was some medical testing in that space, all the way down to AP exams in high school level. I mean, not that we're dealing with high school students, but just from a test approach perspective, and it was far more on the other end, but I mean, I'm just giving you the scale there of we were looking at and really, you know, how, because ultimately it's a test approach, right? And a psychometric testing is ultimately what's the approach is, and it's using those analytics. And so we do look at those kind of things to make sure we're in line, and really working with best practices on that. As I said, ultimately, because what we want are fair and meaningful exams. That's what we really want, is fair and exams that are meaningful to pass, that if you understand it and can demonstrate mastery, you're going to pass. But if you don't, well, it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
And so we're definitely looking at those things I'd say it's probably more benchmarking our approach that way versus, it's hard to, it's not like we can use that outside data to benchmark an individual question, but we can use the approaches and the various metrics and those kind of things, and use those same metrics and in terms of using a best practice in our analytics.
Sure.
Yeah. That's great, because, sometimes you don't always have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to how you evaluate something. There's probably someone who's already blazed a trail there for you. And of course, obviously the testing industry has been around for quite a while. So tons of data is out there to be able to just at least guide your approach with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Is there any kind of, this is, it's a delicate question, but it's a current question. Okay. So I will try and ask this as, as delicately as possible. In terms of demographic data, when it comes to the exams and things like that, are you tracking, say, sex-linked performance, or, I don't even know if the data set is even being, requested, but, kind of like racial profile of performance on certain questions or on the exams, geographically, right? Like, look, Heather says some stuff every so often coming from where she comes from that if I said it, it would sound completely different. And because I come from New York and New Jersey, it would have a 4-letter word included in it. But, in terms of like geography too, in terms of, how things are worded and whatnot, are you looking at those aspects of the testing process as well?
All right. Delicately asked.
Yeah.
I would say some. We don't capture race, so therefore that analysis can't be done if we're not capturing that information, right?
Sure.
As far as gender, we definitely do, can look at those kind of things and have done some of that. We don't typically see any real issues there, so it's not like I have much to report.
Yeah.
The more interesting one, I'd say, is the geographic. And it's for the reasons you said. And as a result, we actually have really pay attention to this, particularly on the exams, around those kind of things. I'm from Philadelphia area. And so I will, particularly, we talked earlier about real life scenarios, right? And so we're trying to, once you're starting to do real life scenarios, you better do a scenario that people understand. Right. And so around the Philadelphia area, there are convenience stores named Wawa. And so if I write a question that says, Matt walked into the Wawa to get a hoagie, and then, and I'm describing this scenario that might have some liability claim, who's liable, people are going to go, what's a hoagie? Some of the country doesn't know, right?
You lost 3/4 of the country right there.
That's the one that walked into the Wawa. Like, is that a wall? Did that mean wall? Like, what's a Wawa? But to me, what I said made total sense, right? Like, I said it to my son, he'd be like, yeah, absolutely. What kind of hoagie did he get? Like, is it, turkey or ham? Like, I mean, like, so we very, and as a result, we really do that. That's the spot that we really try to watch out for some things like that. I can remember kind of a question one time. It was about a windstorm in Florida, and thankfully, this didn't really ultimately impact the question, but as we described, a house that was impacted, and it described that it mentioned a basement. And we later, again, I'm Philadelphia, not Florida, right? So then find out, there are no basements in Florida, right? And so people thought it was a trick question, which was not the intention at all. We do not try to trick people, right? And so, hey, we could make that correction. And like I said, ultimately, it didn't really impact things on that question, thankfully. If it did, we would take care of that, and we would always favor the student if we made that kind of thing. But it's an example of what you're talking about, where there can be a geographic thing going on that inadvertently could trip somebody up, which is not what we're, so we really try to pay attention to that. Because that's where we've seen it happen more frequently.
Yeah.
Those regional phrases and sayings oftentimes get us in more trouble than we ever realize,
Yes.
Because there's a whole slew of those, depending on what part of the country that you live in, or, especially when you consider the fact that, the CPCU Society is an international institute as well. You have people from across the globe taking a test, and somebody read Wawa, somewhere, they might think that's a nasty word or something, So.
Yeah. So we very much guard against that for that reason. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
It sounds like something that would be like, walking around out in the outback down in Australia. Right. What am I supposed to walk into that for? No, that's all really interesting. It's really awesome. I appreciate the fact that you're looking at things like that, because it could, potentially negatively impact, the educational or the testing experience of someone from a different part of the country. So that's really appreciated. The last thing I'll ask you is, like, anything you're at liberty to say that's coming down the pike? Is there, I mean, is it just kind of like tweaking what you already have, or are there other things in development now as a result of, what you've been working on or studying?
Oh, great question. We're always working on new content and things. The CPCU program obviously just revised, but hopefully I won't get my marketing team mad at me here. But we are, if some of you might be familiar with our AINS program, which is our associate in insurance. It's a more foundational or early career. Someone new to the industry, new to risk and insurance. And we're super excited about our program that we're going to release an update in about a week or so. So that's the. But if you have new or early career at your fellow workers, or coming into the industry, it's an awesome program to start with. We're super excited about it. Digital as can be, video broken up into small chunks, really designed with that learner in mind to meet their needs and kind of get them up to speed and get them conversational, right? Because we have things within the insurance industry that are unique to us. And when you've been in it for a while, that's great. But when you start talking about something, what's the combined ratio? If you're new, you're like, even if you've been working in the world for a while, like somewhere else, you don't know what that is, right? Unless you've been in insurance or something like that. And so we try to break down some things at that early career level. And so I'll share that, and hopefully, you guys can, get a little sneak notice on that.
Awesome. Any last questions or anything like that, Heather?
No, Adam, I just want to say many thanks. This was a really great conversation to help people kind of understand what the Institutes is doing to evolve as an organization to serve, insurance professional designations, professional education, professional development. Because if we're not learning, we're not growing. I mean, that's the bottom line. And if you stop learning, you're gonna be left behind by what's happening in our industry right now. So, great motivation for people to think about what options are available for them today to get out there, because you guys are continuing to stay on that cutting edge of what people need to know to stay relevant in our industry today.
Yep, most definitely. So Look, I want to echo Heather's comments. Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time. I know I know that this is something that takes away time from you doing your job. So I appreciate that. Look, it helps us also kind of give folks a little peek behind the curtain, which is also fantastic, which I appreciate. So
absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the invitation.
Oh, anytime. And when you have new stuff that's coming down the pike, let us know. We are more than happy to bring you back, and so we can, help you not get the marketing team mad, and actually happy that you're out publicizing stuff when it needs to get out there. So for everyone else who's watching, again, quick reminder, like, comment, subscribe, share. Put this out there, get people, especially if they're in their course of study in any of the designations that the Institutes is putting out there, or if they're interested in an insurance industry designation, share this out there so that they can get this information and see that, there are folks like Adam making sure that the testing experience and the educational experience is as high level as it can get. So with that, we will be back next week at 5:30 on Wednesday, as usual. And I think next week, let's see, we have, is it underwriting interest group who's next week, or is it loss control?
We have underwriting next week.
Awesome. We are going to learn. I am a dumb caveman broker. I'm going to learn what underwriters are really interested in, specifically what they work on here in the underwriting interest group here in the CPCU Society. So everyone, have a very good evening. Both of you, thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you.